Hi, I'm Cheryl Cook, and I'm running for state representative for Simsbury, the 16th district. You've just seen many pictures of me out and about in our community over the last several months, talking with residents, business owners, and participating in many community activities. I'd like to share with you what I've learned from speaking with you and introduce myself to those I have not had a chance to meet yet. I've been so honored to represent all of you on the Board of Selectmen. Now that we have come through a budget cycle in which we have made some difficult choices and successfully lowered the mill rate, I can now more fully appreciate the impact of our debt and pension responsibilities and take that lesson to a bigger forum and continue to promote our agenda of fiscal prudence. It's time the state adopted a transparent budget and stopped the excessive special interest spending. In addition to serving Simsbury as a selectman, I have continued my work on the Human Rights Committee for the Department of Developmental Services and as a commissioner for the Simsbury Housing Authority. I have been an active voice for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities for more than 20 years. As a housing commissioner, I have participated in the administrative decision-making process from hiring the executive director to tenant leases and budgeting issues. As a parent of 3, I have experienced the educational process from beginning to end. I have seen the special education process from the Birth to 3 program all the way to discharge at age 21. I can appreciate the concerns of parents whose children are not like everyone else. As an attorney, I have represented those parents at planning and placement team meetings and administrative hearings. On the other hand, I can also appreciate the impact of a high-quality, well-rounded education on the typical student. But like many of you, I can see the effect of unfunded mandates from the state and an overabundance of testing, evaluation, and data collection. Our budget reflects these additional costs in the form of significant burdens on our teaching and administrative staff. At the same time that the state is burdening our school district, it has recently been reported that Simsbury alone is underfunded by $6 million. This is a failure of leadership, and the only place to change this cycle is to change the leadership Simsbury has sent to Hartford. I'd like to welcome Susan Salina, who's on the Board of Education here in Simsbury, and she has agreed to come on the program with me today so we can discuss current issues in the Board of Education.
Hi, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Hi, you're welcome. Thanks for being here.
As a Board of Education member, I'm always curious what you're hearing when you're out talking to residents. We hear from a lot of parents, but it's nice to know what the broader community is talking to you about.
It is, and it's one of those opportunities you get when you go door to door to talk to a lot of different people and a lot of different walks of life, and it's very interesting. Most of the comments I get now about education revolve around Common Core. People are very concerned about it. A lot of people don't understand it and have questions, and they don't understand the impact that it has on our local school district.
And that is a large impact, as we all know. The biggest part of that has to do with the testing, which you've experienced with your son.
I have, and it's one of the things that is the most frustrating to me as a parent. And as somebody involved in local government, the time spent testing and preparing for the test, and it takes time out of the classroom, and it takes kids away from learning, and it takes teachers away from their work. And I think it was not a well thought out process. And I think that whoever was making up this rule obviously didn't plan very well for the end game.
Right. I think that our issues seem to be the standards. Not many people have issues with kids being held to standards because it is the right thing, and they always have been. The issue comes in with the technology we need to provide to do testing the way that Common Core demands it. Yep. And that's a huge impact on our budget because we now have to have more computers for everyone. Right. And tests have to be given grade-wide at the same time. It's a challenge.
It is.
And then the other piece of that is the teacher evaluation that comes right along with it. And the stress that adds to our administrators who have to meet with every single teacher in every single building 3 times a year.
And how many teachers is that, do you know?
Oh, well, we were doing a count, and it's over 100 elementary teachers, over 60 middle school teachers, and again over 100 high school teachers.
Right. So that takes for every teacher, meeting 2 or 3 times a year.
3 times a year.
3 times a year. out of the classroom, and another teacher has to participate in that review, don't they?
It's an administrator. It can only be done by administration.
Which places a huge burden on the administrative staff.
It does. It absolutely does.
And that brings us back to the pressure that we feel on our local budget. You know, as we've gone through the budget process, you know, I get a lot of questions about the size of the Board of Education budget. It's the main driver of our budget in town. And a lot of people don't realize how much these unfunded mandates from the state impact our local budget.
And that is a huge piece of it, because there is not money that comes down the pike to let us support that additional administrator we may need to run through teacher evaluation, or the extra technology that we need to put in place to administer the testing to the kids.
And there are other unfunded mandates that come from the state, aside from the testing piece.
There are pages and pages of unfunded mandates, and the newest example is the change to our attendance policy.
Right.
And I'm sure that that is going to hit home for everybody in the next month.
Right. And as school starts and kids start to get sick at school and they need a note, and well, you could tell us, what is the new procedure if your child is sick?
The new procedure is, once you call school to let them know that your child will not be attending, the child must have a note upon return to school explaining why. And a note from you will suffice for the first 9 times. Once you have a child who's out on the 10th day, it must be accompanied by a doctor's note. And so you and I both know kids get the flu, they're home for 5 days. If you have 2 bouts of flu, or if you have a child who's sustained a concussion, you can rack those days up very quickly. And now it involves cooperation of our medical community to make sure that we can get the notes to get the kids back in school.
To get the kids. And you need an administrator to take the notes when they get to school and make sure that everybody has them. And this was done, what, for a truancy problem?
It was definitely tacked on to truancy issues, and it's not an issue our district really ever had.
Right.
But it certainly is.
So it's one of those issues that might have been relevant to another district, but is not particularly relevant to Simsbury.
Right.
And there's no way to tailor the remedy, because we're all required to do it no matter what. It's a one-size-fits-all mandate. And you know,
as many of the state mandates are.
Right. And another issue that comes along with a one-size-fits-all is the ECS funding, or the education cost sharing.
It's our largest grant from the state.
Logo. Right. And maybe you can tell us a little bit, but I understand it's done by a formula.
Yes.
And that formula has some serious flaws.
It does. It was, you know, the intent of it was fine, but it has never been a fully funded grant. So we've gone through peaks and valleys of funding, but more often than not, I shouldn't say more often than not. In my 7 years on the Board of Education, and for people who've been there much longer than I, we have never had a fully funded ECS grant. And along with that, you know, it comes a host of issues.
Right.
And we really need somebody to get in there and take a hard look at how that grant is supposed to work and is distributed. And people who pay a lot of money into Hartford and into, you know, our tax dollars, it's a frustration that everybody has.
Well, it's one of my main priorities, is to help equalize the educational funding and give the local boards more discretion with dealing with the mandates. Because I think there is no way to fit a one-size-fits-all regulation for the state of Connecticut. You know, every town has their own Board of Ed, and every Board of Ed knows its students better than the state.
That's true.
And that's what we should be looking at, because those are the kids we have to worry about, and you know, we shouldn't be worried about the overall regulatory system.
It would be a huge help too, and you would be a fan favorite of every Board of Ed member I know if you can accomplish that, and we would be happy to support you in any way possible.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your views with me, and I look forward to working with you.
I look forward to working with you.
I'd like to welcome Sandy Fleet. She is the community liaison for the Farmington Valley Visiting Nurses Association. She's also a resident of Simsbury. And Sandy,
thank you
welcome.
so much.
Thank you so
you.
much for coming on with me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to hear your views and your concerns and issues that you're hoping to be addressed in this election.
Great,
very
We have
important.
lots to talk about.
I know there is, and I wish we had lots of time. But
Well, I'd like to talk about some of the senior issues.
excellent.
And one of the things we've talked about throughout the whole town is about funding. We're a nonprofit, and so funding has been cut with us, and people have been very generous with donations.
Right.
But still, the cost of medical care, as you know, goes up and up every year, every
Absolutely.
month, and people are concerned about that.
Yeah, and particularly we are in an environment where, we have next to no interest. So people with investments maybe are getting less interest than they had anticipated for their retirement
Absolutely.
years. And it's putting a strain on those budgets. They thought they had carefully planned, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem like quite as much as
That dollar
as-
doesn't stretch
It's
as
not
far.
going as far, and it's a big concern. And one of the issues that I would like to work on in Hartford is promoting and funding the public and private partnership between nonprofits and public agencies who could use those nonprofits, more effectively to deliver services, since they are already in the community. They already know the residents, and it's important that we foster that relationship rather than creating more bureaucracy.
Exactly, exactly. There's an awful lot of that. And we like to increase our programming. We like to increase our prevention, our education programs. And it's tough to make our programs stretch that much further. We do a lot of home care, and we have our hospice program,
Right, which is
all
so
of which
important.
are wonderful programs. And we've been in business since 1908, so
It's wonderful.
that's a long time.
It's a long time, and you
And I
guys-
think people know us. They
Yes.
really do.
And they trust you.
Yes,
More
they do.
importantly.
Yes.
And I think that it's more important to foster that relationship than to foster another relationship with a state agency. That to bring another agency in where we already have built relationships
Right. And relationships are the most important.
are important.
People feel comfortable with us. Their neighbor or their family has used us for many years. And so the comfort level right there. But again, the funding has become a problem for everybody. But
everybody, yeah.
As our funding decreases and our needs increase, that's it's a difficult situation for us.
But would you say there are actually opportunities for the state to save money if they promoted more aging in place initiatives
That's a
And-
very big
and helped
situation.
promote more services to allow people to remain in their homes and in their communities, close to their families and close to those services that they're familiar with?
Right. A lot of people don't realize that assisted living is out of pocket. Chronic disease is out of pocket in many cases.
Right.
And that is difficult. People don't have the money to be able to move into a place sometimes. They have to stay at home. And if they could have some of these programs in their home so that they can stay
Absolutely.
in place.
And there's been a lot of changes to Medicare and Medicaid over the
Yes.
last couple of years, which have impacted the delivery of those services and the funding.
That's right. We have Medicare, we have Title 19, and our mission has always been stated that despite whether they can pay or not, we will always service a patient. So again, a lot of our funding comes out of our pocket to take care of everyone.
To take care of people.
Right.
Now, is there an issue that you find among your clients that's of particular importance to them, or
Transportation.
that's?
Yes.
I'm so glad you said that, because I have heard that from so many people.
Correct.
As I go around meeting people, and I see a lot of seniors in their homes. They're
Right.
and they're always willing to talk, and it's very nice to be welcomed by them, and they can share their concerns with me. And it almost always starts with transportation.
Right,
It's a
and a lot
big
of people
issue.
are not driving.
Right.
Or they won't drive in the winter. So transportation is a real big need. Also adult daycare. That's another area that we may want to think about too in the future.
And again, in an effort to keep people in their homes and out of more expensive nursing home care. And the state, I think it's like almost 75% of the time, pays for nursing home care. You know, people who go on Title
they have to
19
spend down,
and
and
they
they have
spend
to
down
do
their
that.
assets and they go in a nursing home, and the state is picking up the tab for that. And I think we have to be more vigilant in allowing people to stay in their homes and
lots of
support them.
services are available. I mean, physical therapy, occupational therapy, IV infusion, all of those things can be brought into the home. Wound care.
right. It's so important. So is there something that what would you like to see if you had a wish list?
Oh,
you
if I had a
know?
wish list, I would definitely want to see more bus service. I think we've got a very good population of 23,000 some folks
Yes,
here.
we do. Almost 24.
And that would be, I don't know what the percentage of elder services are, but I do think that if we could add a few buses more so that folks could take a bus from place to place, bring them down into the center of town.
Of town, exactly.
Go to
would-
the doctors, go to the places.
And that fits in with our overall economic development plan for the town. Is
Right.
to
We
bring,
have so many nice places.
right. It would be great if we could make more transportation
Absolutely.
opportunities available
Sure.
for our seniors.
And that's costly. Not
is.
only the transportation, but the fuel costs, that type of thing. So we have to really account for all of that.
Well, it's something that I'd love to work on in Hartford
Well,
for you.
good. Good. We would love to have that.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
on with me.
Thank you so
I
much.
really appreciate hearing your views and your concerns, and
Big concern for the seniors.
it is.
I'm one of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'd like to welcome Mike Payne, president and owner of Payne's Inc., a local business. Mike also serves on the Board of Selectmen with me here in town, so we've had a few times on TV here
Yep,
together. But
we have.
I am so thankful that you decided to come on and talk with me today
Happy
and
to.
let me know your concerns as a local business owner.
Sure. My concerns, and I've actually been going to the Capitol for a number of years for our national association. I'm the state chapter chairman, plus I'm involved with a couple business groups. And what's going on right now is really, I guess, consistent inconsistency. And it seems as though every time we turn around, there's another new fee or a fee that was supposed to be sunsetted that was not sunsetted, which
Right.
frankly raises the cost of doing business.
I've talked to a couple of business owners as I've walked around town, and one gentleman in particular was very concerned about the unemployment regulations. In fact, he was going in some detail about, the amount of his payroll, the percentages he's required to pay, what happens when somebody only works a short period of time and then applies for unemployment. Do
Yeah.
you find any of that in your business?
Yes, we've run into that, and everything from the way the unemployment system is set up in Connecticut is you pay into a fund, and then when your employees are granted benefits, you pay more because of the usage. And in addition to that, the state is very liberal in the sense of who they give those benefits to. I've had employees that have one who retired and then had a part-time job, and that part-time job laid him off, and then they came back on us because you pay a percentage. They go back a number of quarters.
Yes.
How much money did you earn each quarter
Yes.
to then get paid?
And as I was discussing this with him, we started to talk about, possible remedies and perhaps a minimum number of days you had to be employed or,
Yep.
or actually work before you were eligible for unemployment. And
It is, and it's also, the state has even gotten to the point where the rules are you file and you're given it, and then they file the case and it goes through a process and could be up to 3 different hearings if we choose to contest them receiving those benefits.
Right.
We actually had one employee who failed was driving his personal vehicle and then lost his license for DWI. As a result of that, he couldn't drive our trucks, which I'm fine with. I'm perfectly in agreement with that. But we had to pay unemployment for an action he took on his personal time.
Even though he was unable to work.
And we still had the job to do and had to do the work to, frankly, collect everybody's stuff, and we're getting penalized.
Right. And I understand there's an additional cost on businesses
Yes.
now that the state unemployment fund is essentially run out.
Yes.
And we are borrowing money.
We borrowed it, and now there is a surcharge that we just had to pay in August based on a flat fee for each employee. And so we had to pay that in. And again, these are not nickel and diming because it's real dollars. But every time you turn around, there's a new rule, there's a new regulation, as opposed to trying to streamline things and, frankly, encourage people to stay in business, stay in the state,
Right.
and contribute to the, if you will, the rising tide
Yes.
will lift all boats. And it is very frustrating with a lot of the regulations, and they're not all bad, but at the end of the day, if I've got a pot of money that is my profit, I have less money to share with my employees, to give them raises,
Right.
to pay for our equipment, to pay my additional expenses. It is frustrating.
And there are other ways that state regulations impact your business, I'm sure.
Oh, everything from noise to hours we can work, to where we have to go, the tracking of where our vehicles go. We actually pay when we travel in the state of Connecticut, and if we go out of state, we have to file for monies from the state that we're driving
Right.
into. And it just raises, if you will, the administrative cost for us to provide those services.
Exactly.
I mean, years ago, we picked up garbage and we hauled it to the local dump and we left it there. Now we don't, and we're driving longer, farther. There's fewer. There are no dumps, or very few dumps left in the whole state. Most of our waste is burned or recycled, which is
Right.
wonderful. But at the same point, there's a cost to doing all of those services.
And your company has been in the forefront of recycling
Right.
efforts locally. And for instance, like the removal of underground storage tanks.
Yep.
I know that we discussed the fund that was supposed to fund
Yes.
claims against that, and that fund is no longer solvent.
Well, the fund is still there, but the state took the money that was in the fund to pay these fees for tanks. Every gallon of fuel we buy, we pay something into the fund, and I think that's a practical methodology to get the funds, but the state had a shortfall, went in and took those dollars. Now the funds aren't there for when there is a leaking tank to pay those
Right.
bills. So the people are on the hook, and but we're still paying.
And you're still paying the per gallon
I'm still
charge.
paying the per gallon charge.
And the state has removed those funds to the general fund.
Yes, to pay their other bills. And it is very frustrating when I can't just arbitrarily raise my prices and do things to balance my
Right.
revenues and expenses.
So since you mentioned balance, what would you like to see in Hartford now?
I would like to see, if you will, a freeze on the current rules and regulations, and then turn around and look to see which ones can we do away with. You know, which ones are truly bringing a benefit. You know, rules for the sake of rules doesn't move anybody forward.
Right.
And it is all of us. It affects all of
Exactly.
us. You know, the recycling law, which is a wonderful law and absolutely the right thing to do, there is a cost to do that. And it should be a net sum benefit. And if it's not, then we have to acknowledge that and realize that it is for the greater good that we're doing these kind of things.
Right,
And
but-
just acknowledge it.
But then review all of those regulations and do the same analysis for all of them.
We should. We should do it all the way through. You know, there was a bill in the last legislature about requiring everybody, even if you have a retirement plan or a pension plan or a 401k or something else, where the state was going to require you to join theirs. Well, we already have a very
You have
good
your own.
pension plan. We've had it for 20 plus years, and we've actually had some people retire, and monies were there.
And it's there, which is what's supposed to happen.
Exactly. And we have a bunch of requirements as a fiduciary and trustee for the 401k plan and all of those things. And they are there for the employees and the
Right.
greater good. And it's a very good thing. I have no problem with that.
Well, I just need to thank you again for coming in and talking to me and for sharing your concerns about the
Happy to.
business climate. And I look forward to working with you as your state representative in Hartford.
I'm really excited. Looking forward to it, Cheryl.
Me too.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. I love public service. I'm a dedicated public servant, and I know it's not just about showing up and going home. Together, we have to do the work, and that's why I do not just send a check to Fidelco. I raise a puppy to be a guide dog. I don't stand and pose with a group at the senior center. I serve lunch and then sit down and have lunch with the group. I do not just show up at Owen Murphy Apartments for the holiday party. I go to the tenant meeting where the tenants find out their rent is going up. I don't just put my name down on a piece of paper and say I was at a committee meeting. I argue with the behaviorist about the use of physical restraints on an intellectually disabled person. So why am I running now? Because Simsbury deserves better. You deserve better. I know there are greater opportunities to represent your interests and the interests of the town of Simsbury at the state level. I'm asking all of you for your support, because with your support and all of our ideas, we can make a much-needed change in Hartford. In the coming weeks, you can expect to see me in your neighborhood. I look forward to meeting with you.